Okay.
Now we have not, and we will be sending out that Zoom meeting to get that on your calendar with the Zoom with that as well, just just in case. Um, but yes, that's the next TEA meeting.
Okay.
And we have a little break.
Yeah, because we were not meeting in something September was all.
September is a special meeting specifically to approve the special funding streams for Excel and CTE. Yep. So we will have a brief meeting, but the board is not meeting until September. And so we will actually have whatever we have from our August meeting as well as that specifically to take forward to the board for September. And April, I see you on too, so whatever I didn't express correctly,
No,
jump
no,
in.
you're right. So the special board meeting or special TEA meeting in September is purely to approve those funding because
Yeah.
as the
Okay.
statute reads, I believe we have to get the money out the door within 90,
I
60,
think
90
it's
days.
60 days.
So that's we'll just hit that one topic and be done.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. I slept a little over the summer, so I forgot.
Good. Good.
Understood.
Hey, gang.
Hello, Mr. Bean.
April's got so many IOUs, you can just add it to her list.
This is Crystal's request. Don't you put that on me.
Yeah,
Put it on my tab.
I knew where the request was coming from. Hard to believe we haven't met since May.
Yep. We're kicking off. It's the official start of the year.
Nice. Live stream looks good and is on. And Chair Bean, we have Member Hoover so far and Member Clark. And we should also be joined by Member McCulka. Chair Bean, Member McCulka did just join, so you do have a quorum, just to let you know. Member Frederick did let us know that he would not be able to join, and I don't believe that we were able to get in contact with Member Anderson.
All right, so you feel good? Notice there's a Read AI bot in the chat. Is everyone comfortable with that? All right. We'll call the meeting of the August 7th Program and Curriculum Committee meeting to order. Couple items on the agenda, but I think, according to my conversation with Crystal, I think if we could switch discussion items A and B around, meaning put B into A and A into B, may help facilitate more discussion on CTE program discussion. So does anyone object to switching items A and B? All right, hearing none, we'll consider that done. But first item on the agenda is our May 2025 committee meeting minutes. If there are no corrections or additions, I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Thank you, Cindy. Was it Tiffany? Was that you?
That was.
All right, thank you. Does anyone object? Hearing none, we'll consider the meeting minutes from May 15th, 2025 approved. All right, Crystal, we'll go with the flip-flop and switch it to you for the program alignment for police science.
Great. Thank you, Chair Bean. Good afternoon. Feels like long time no see, everyone. For program alignment, I have for your review the police science program that has gone through the realignment process. This information is located on pages 7 through 9 of your packet. The police science program was last realigned in 2011. It had 2 exit points, a technical certificate C, and an associate of applied science degree with 8 common courses and 1 support course. Review of the police science alignment began in response to faculty contacting KBOR requesting realignment due to advisory board recommendations. A survey was sent to the relevant business and industry community, as well as the colleges offering this program, to gauge the need for a program realignment. With that, 25 businesses completed the survey, with 10 representatives attending the Business and Industry Committee meeting in March. And then on April 22nd, the faculty committee meeting had administrators and faculty from 5 colleges, 4 businesses, and board staff meet to proceed with the process. As a result, the following updates were made. So first, the committee recommended to change the name of the program from Police Science/Criminal Justice to simply Police Science, to better reflect the occupational focus of the training provided and to separate this program from our other criminal justice, the Associate of Arts transfer degrees that are offered at the colleges. This program is currently operating under Police Science SIP 43.0107 and the Criminal Justice/Safety Studies SIP 43.0104. So therefore, it's a dual SIP, which is pretty rare for program alignment. The latter SIP title and code is being removed due to its broader focus on the criminal justice system, the organizational components and processes, and its legal and public policy context. Next, the combined BNI and faculty committee recommended keeping the 2 existing award levels so that Technical Certificate C and the AAS would both require all 9 of the common courses and the 1 support course listed on the alignment map. For the AAS degree, as an additional requirement for employment, graduates are required by Kansas state law to complete a Law Enforcement Academy training program for a minimum of 12 credit hours. So generally, this would be the Kansas Law Enforcement Training Center, which is referred to as CLETC. And lastly, the committee focused on the course competencies and placement of the required courses within the program. So common courses will now include 27 credits across the 9 courses that you see on the alignment map of page 9 on your packet. And then there's one new support course that was recommended by BNI due to an identified need in the field. And that course is General Psychology / Abnormal Psychology, or a Mental Health Crisis Response / Intervention course. BNI made additional recommendations on the included required courses as follows. So first, the current criminal justice interview and report writing course that was split into 2 separate 3-credit-hour courses. So we had 1 3-credit-hour course, and now it will be 6 credit hours total. And that was due to a noticeable skills gap in graduates entering the workforce. And then professional responsibility and criminal justice for 3 credits has moved from a support course to a common course. And an agency administration 3-credit-hour course has been removed from the alignment completely. Now, that doesn't mean that colleges can't offer that course. It's just not going to be one that's required for alignment. Furthermore, BNI recommended that students take 2 foundational courses, one being Introduction to Criminal Justice for 3 credits, and the other being Professional Responsibility in Criminal Justice for 3 credits during that first semester of their program. So the overall program structure would still allow for a credit hour range to provide institutional flexibility within the total program. The proposed alignment map was issued for presidential comment from May 27th to June 10th. And of the 11 institutions currently offering the program, 1 comment was received in opposition. That comment requested retaining the dual program title to still include criminal justice and to provide an alternative option to the 12 credit hour requirement of CLETC Law Enforcement Academy training. However, board staff maintain the BNI recommendation and faculty majority consensus to proceed with the title of Police Science with the single SIP code of 43.0107, as well as the 12 credit hour CLETC Police Academy requirement for employment. With that, the proposed revisions to the police science program alignment have been reviewed by board staff and have been recommended for approval by the program and curriculum committee. So with that, I would stand for any questions.
Thank you, Crystal. Committee members, any questions for Crystal?
Does the overall credit hours that you need to complete the program, has it increased, or are things just moving around? I couldn't quite tell.
Sure, mostly it had moved around, but there was 1 additional 3-credit-hour course. So with what had been removed and how the report writing and interviewing course was split, and so that added the additional 3 hours, it did go up by 3 hours total.
Okay. But the 12 hours that's required, that was the in opposition, that's not required now, right? Or
No, it's required. So that 12 credit hours, that actually isn't offered at the tech or community colleges. That is actually the law enforcement officer training, the police academy.
Okay.
And so that's CLETC. And so basically with that, it's not required on the Cert C level. But if they were to get employment, they would have to, by state law, actually go to that academy. And it just counts for 12 credit hours. It's not actually 12 credit hours taught at the college level.
Gotcha. I was just trying to better understand the opposition. I'm not quite sure I see the concern, but
it really is about completer status. So a lot of times students may go forward, and when they enroll for the AAS. Well,
Mhm.
after they complete their courses at the colleges and then they go on to the academy, it's pretty frequently that that completion of the academy is not always reported back to the
Oh.
colleges. And we don't really have a way around that right now. And since it is a requirement by law for employment as a law enforcement officer, we can't scrap it, unfortunately.
got it. Okay, thank you. That I just wanted to make sure I understood the opposition.
Absolutely.
Any other questions for Crystal? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the program alignment / realignment of the police science program.
So moved.
Thank you, Cindy. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tiffany. Any additional discussion? If
And
not,
Mike, do we want that added to consent or to the discussion agenda for TEA?
solid point, Crystal. Well, if there's no objection, we'll just add that to the consent agenda.
Great, thank you.
All right. All in favor of approving the program alignment / realignment of the police science program and placing it on the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, motion carried. Thank you, Crystal. So April, flipping back to item A/B now. Excel and CTE program discussion.
Sure, thank you. So this actually is going to be somewhat confusing. I'm going to try to make it not as confusing as possible. So over the summer, the community colleges and technical colleges and board staff got together to discuss several things, several issues that have arisen in certain conversations with legislators. Those three concerns are listed on page 3 in the issue paper. One being a perceived funding overlap for when a student is taking certain courses at the high school during the high school day taught by the high school teacher. They're receiving funding through the K-12 system and also higher ed. That particular issue we are going to set aside for right now. We're still working with the colleges on some recommendations on how we fix that. What we're going to talk about today is Excel and CTE. So commonly known as Senate Bill 155, but Excel and CTE is the official name. It has exploded over the years. We all know that. It's a very popular program. We are up over $47 million for that appropriation. Just put it in perspective, our traditional college-age students, technical side of the house, we are appropriated $66 million. So we are approaching equal appropriations for high school students as well as non-high school students. So some questions have been raised about the program itself. Accountability, what was our pass rates? Why are we not seeing credentials? Are people getting hired? So those have been questions that have circled around. So we got together this summer and came up with, I think, 6 different ideas. So on page 3 and 4 of the issue paper, there are some ideas that we are kicking around. We brought these same ideas to Budget and Finance earlier this morning, got some more feedback from them. And so now it is this committee's turn to hear what we came up with and possibly get your feedback on what we should do prior to bringing this forward to the full TEA. So the first recommendation is possibly limiting Excel and CTE enrollment to juniors and seniors. So while they're in the freshman, sophomore year, maybe they focus at high school and then take advantage at their junior and senior year. The second was to align some placement requirements. So right now, I don't believe for most programs there are any type of reading or math scores to get into those programs. Healthcare, there's requirements for licensure to have certain test scores. So maybe we explore a reading or math level. The other thing we discussed is if a student fails, maybe they possibly have a sit-out period, a sit-out semester to cool off, getting them to understand that this is a college transcript. This has lifelong impacts of if you fail a course. Another suggestion that we had was possibly aligning the courses a student takes each semester with their chosen area of study on their individual plan of study. So mirroring those up so that for a semester they are focused in one area, not lots of different areas. The other ideas that we kicked around are more institutional based. So program completion, how can we help that? Instead of letting a student come in, and I used welding earlier today, it's the most logical one to use. Instead of marking a first-time student in as seeking the associate degree, maybe we start with that very short Cert A, 16 to 20 credit hours. Focus them on that. Once they complete that, they can roll to the next level. They can continue on or they can become employed, whichever the student wants to do. But that's where we'll really see some movement in some of those completion numbers. And the final recommendation was to prioritize funding to Promise eligible programs. So if you remember, Promise Act is the scholarship after somebody completes high school. Those careers have to be high wage, high demand, or critical need in the state. So maybe narrowing the funding down to those particular occupations, which the legislature appears to support since they provided that scholarship. So we did ask, after we had our meeting, we asked the community and technical colleges to go back, review everything that we talked about, provide any additional feedback. The community colleges were in support of those 6 items to bring forward to discuss. The technical colleges did provide a letter, which is also in the meeting packet. And I believe I did see Amber, who is representing the community colleges. I don't see Greg, but we have Jim on the line representing technical colleges, and I would open it up for them to provide any additional comments.
Good morning. This is Amber, president at Cloud. Thanks, April. Vice President White really explained it very well and articulately. We've just come together and we do share some of the background and key concerns she lists in the packet. We, as in community colleges, support looking at those different areas and trying to find some efficiencies and just making sure that we're following the intent and the sustainability of Excel and CTE over time. One thing that we've discussed as part of it in the consideration 1 for the limiting of the freshman and sophomore students from enrolling, we thought about something we'll dig into a little bit further is how that affects CNA, because there were in the data that Charlotte provided some sophomores that earned their CNA in AY 23 and 24 that we just don't want any unintended consequences of what that will do to the workforce, because if you live in a rural area or not, a lot of our high school students are working in nursing homes. And so just things as we're starting to explore, wanted to mention that and really making sure that through this, I think we've had some really great discussion, but making sure that we're being prudent with those dollars, the taxpayer dollars, but also being cognizant of how we can support students in receiving those credentials. And I think April really articulated it very well. One thing we discussed this morning that I think April and Charmin are going to work to do is just to provide some additional data for completion by program by institution or failure by program by institution, or however they may be able to narrow that down. As institutions, of course, we're all looking at our own success rates and trying to drill down into those, but we do have a lot of new presidents, a lot of other things that we do. And as community colleges, we had our quarterly meeting last weekend, and we all agreed that if there's something that we're doing as an institution that may be an outlier or may be negatively affecting the success of students, we would of course want to know. And so I think that additional data might help provide some more context for the sector as a whole. And so just appreciate the opportunity to speak and appreciate the work that the KBOR staff and the tech colleges are doing in collaboration, because we do understand that it's really important that we're all aligned on this. Thank you.
So pinch hitting for Greg. Again, the program has been successful. We'd like to make it more successful. We don't want effectiveness to get overshadowed by efficiency, but there are some things we can do to tighten it up. We agree the funding for Excel and CTE should be targeted for juniors and seniors. However, I think it's important to show that sophomores and freshmen, if they can pay their own way, could still take advantage of early college. There's some discussion about we might grant an exception like with CNA, because in some parts of the state, that's a critical healthcare workforce. And it's a good way for students to find out early if they like healthcare. So the CNA might be worthy of some more study. The placement is critical because, and I'm going to make some comments, and I hope Natalie understands I'm not attacking K-12. They're swamped, they're busy, much like we are. I think it's pretty accurate to say some of the students slip through the cracks of the process to get them in the classes. They don't have the reading ability, and right now reading is critical in any tech program. Math matters too. So we want to set up the students to succeed, not fail. So some more getting a little more strict with enforcing some of the placement standards for reading and math in particular would probably help ensure more student success and less failure. Beyond that, we'd like to look at that institutional data and then consider things related to the matching up this course with the student's individual study plan. But we realize that could change every semester, but at least where they're not. Some students I've heard, and I got a feeling it's accurate, opt out of taking some high school classes because they can take a tech ed class instead of taking speech or a science class or whatever. So how do we make sure that we're allowing them to explore, but within certain limits related to their interests? On the Promise Act, while we understand that, we would hope not to go to that because in some of our service areas, we have some work with employers and some of the occupational training that does not touch Promise scholarship eligible programs. And we want to be able to keep feeding that workforce. And that high school workforce, due to the success of the program, we are churning out a lot of people into some entry-level jobs and giving them a chance to step up with more credentials and academic earnings in tech ed. Thank you.
Chair Bean, I should have prefaced with this. I think some state agencies have taken a cut already in budgets. We are preparing for additional cuts. So and I refer to it as cleaning up our side of the house or side of the street before the legislature can do it, might fare us well to say, here's how we are going to clean up our act. We might save the state some money. We're going to focus, might help us in this legislative session, knowing that we are going to have a very conservative legislature and cuts are coming.
Well, yeah, I agree, April. April, one thing, just kind of looking at the graphs, could you refresh our memory on what participant completion mean?
So participating is just they are taking courses. So a completion is going to be they completed some program of study. So like I was talking about a Cert A in welding earlier, that's roughly 16 to 20 credit hours. They're going to complete at the college, but they're also going to receive industry credentials. So
right,
that's a completion.
So that's a head count, basically, not a course count.
Well, it gets a little tricky when we talk Excel and CTE right now, because students are taking courses from multiple areas. So it's hard for us to determine what their focus is. So when we say the student's major, a lot of times we don't know if they're taking something from auto, welding, IT. We don't know what their major is. So that's also leads to the confusion of why people aren't completing, is they're not focused. So if they're focused for one semester, we might see some more movement in that area.
So just so I'm clear, on the top chart, academic year 2024 by grade, the first column on the left, 524 participants. That's 524 students that could be taking multiple classes and multiple paths, right?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Sharman, I'm going to call on
Yes.
Sharman because I know she pulled this together for me.
No, that's fine. So right above that, Chair Bean, you'll see the 16,242 unduplicated head count. That is just what it says, an unduplicated head count in high school taking the technical coursework. Then that participant line, you'll see that it totals up to, I believe, 18,212. So if a student is participating in multiple programs, let's say that they were looking at certified nurse aide and phlebotomy, they would be counted twice as that participant. That's the difference that you're thinking about there.
Okay. I'm with you now.
And since we are looking at that the first two charts are basically AY24 and AY23 by grade level. If we focused on juniors and seniors only, clearly you could see a savings to the state. One thing that I know was brought to my attention earlier today is the unknown column. That probably wouldn't fare well in our legislature. We should know what grade a student is in. So these are the things we're talking about where we're trying to clean up what we're doing. That I would think that's concerning. I don't know if anybody else has concerns about that, but did receive a
would-
concern.
I would just offer that in those discussions about those people, those students, one of the things that we think may be happening are students are able to enroll, for instance, online, and they are able to enroll without necessarily always going through the high school channels. And so the data capture of a student that has taken it upon themselves to enroll, much like a traditional post-secondary student, we may not be capturing that. That may be at least part of that.
So one more question on the AY charts, percent of completion. I'll be honest, those aren't very thrilling numbers. Is that students that complete a course or complete a program?
Complete a program.
All right.
Chair Bean, if I may offer, I guess, some just thoughts in listening to this. As we focus on concentrators and completers and trying to get young people to finish and get industry credentials, it just seems as though the steps that are taken would be aligned with that so that they're leaving with something at the end of the investment. So, just your basic ROI, your return on investment. It seems as though that would be a focus, but I do worry about equity issues when we start saying in order to participate, in TCALC you have to be a junior or senior, but we always have students who they took classes in their middle school. They got an early start, and for phlebotomy is a perfect one since we have kids that are working at Stormont. CNA is another one. Some young people can go into the law enforcement pathway as well and get jobs and dispatch and other kinds of things. So I worry about that a little bit in that, just being real careful about what are the parameters that we're keeping people out. To make sure that it's as accessible as possible. Yeah, even when you're looking at the academic prerequisite, we have certainly learned that prerequisites are good, but they also can be areas where young people aren't testing to their capacity, and then we get them in and they're able to function. So there are some grades and other things that we take into account in addition to that. So just food for thought in that regard. But for me, the alignment with getting concentrators and completers rather than having random acts of taking courses spread seems to be something that's not only most efficient, but a better return on investment for young people and for us, just from what you've shared. It's not a question, but more of a comment in both areas.
And Dr. Anderson, I would add, after this morning's meeting, we did discuss about bringing Dr. Lane, who is a former regent, but also worked in K-12 and is currently working for us on our literacy program, into this conversation about test scores and what would be appropriate, but also multiple measures so that it's not such a high stake test for a student. What are the different things we can look at to gauge success?
No, that's great. That's great. Thank you, Vice President White. That's excellent.
So April, I don't know if I have a chance or Mike.
Absolutely.
We talked about this as a team. We actually looked at the Perkins 5 definition about what should be included in a program of study. I think it mirrors what Dr. Anderson was saying. And I totally think that we think the individual plan of study should play a part. And we created a document, and I'll send it to you. We worked with the Board of Regents for about a year and came up with the Kansas IPS Student Summary Form, that says, what are my career interests? What courses have I taken? What sequence of courses in a pathway? So we embedded all that in there. And then I think what you said also is that program completion, having more communication between secondary and post-secondary on what is that industry recognized credential that aligns with that Cert A, Cert B, or Cert C. and understanding that occupation or that SOC code so that they could set those goals and understand that prior to an associate's, there would be that exit point that would equate to that high skill, high wage, in demand job. So we actually have developed a form, be happy to share it, that might help with communication both at secondary and post-secondary.
That's great. And since both you and Dr. Anderson are on here, I was going to follow up on that unknown question. Do you guys know how students, obviously you're not going to know every student, how they're coming in, how they're maybe bypassing the school, like the high school itself?
So as you said that, I pulled up the dual credit enrollment of high school students in eligible public post-secondary institutions, that cooperative agreement that was passed, the Kansas Challenge to Secondary Schools Act. Is best practice knowing that having an agreement, a cooperative agreement in place between the secondary and post-secondary institution would have a lot of this information, and it refers to the IPS. But if it's not during the traditional school year, you know, how they would enroll. But if we truly go back to that legislation and look at those cooperative agreements, you know, that's in place to hope that the school knows that this is available for dual credit and the parents knows what are transfer agreements. But if it's not during the normal school day and there isn't a cooperative agreement to know when they've enrolled, I can't really answer that question. I could do some more asking.
Sure.
And I did have a clarifying question. Thinking about the item number 2, align with placement requirements. You know, we've talked a lot about making sure that the student has, a lot of institutions, I understand, use AccuPlacer. You know, we've talked about work keys also that the students tape, or what might be another assessment. Like you say, some of our students may be successful. I was asked the question, what is used for that basic skills assessment? I know when I was an adjunct at Barton County, our students would have to take that and pass that before they could enroll. Unless they were a gifted student and had in their IP, they could have it at an earlier age. I just was curious to see what most institutions were using.
And is that required for Excel and CTE students?
And that was a clarifying question.
And I would ask our colleges to help with that one.
This is Heather. I was just going to say at our meeting this weekend, we talked about that with the community colleges, and it seemed that very, very few were using anything. Most were using high school GPA as the criteria.
So my personal opinion is we need to have those students take the AccuPlacer for math and reading so we can ensure they have a minimum ability that we would require for any student to be able to have a chance at it.
This is Deb Mikulka, and I can see a real need actually for some sort of review or evaluation of readiness as freshmen or sophomores at whatever levels decided, because those are job skills that are needed when they get out of school. And our idea is that we're preparing them. And if we find out they aren't ready for the classes, for any of the post-secondary Excel and CTE classes in high school, that we have a chance in the earlier years, we have a chance at intervention so that we can address some of those issues before they get out of high school and they can't get a job because they can't read or they can't do the skills that are needed for some basic jobs. So I kind of, anyway, I think some sort of ability to identify if there's basic skills deficiencies, to identify those. And I don't want to try to put more work on public school systems, but we better figure out how we graduate kids that can read and write to at least a minimal degree for career readiness, in my opinion.
So in my experience, the students took those And then I'm just curious, and Jim, and you may have feedback on this. We had a point person at our high school who would have conversations with post-secondary to check on attendance and see if there's any strategies that could be used.
I think almost all of us have that or something in place. I'm gonna just be candid. The pace at the high schools, as you know, they don't have enough counselors usually to handle the workload. So I think we've just developed a few holes in the system that we need to tighten up. Not blaming anybody, but the program is popular. We need to just go back to enforcing a few of the guidelines that ensure student success.
And Natalie, we did talk earlier, and I think even in our college meeting when we had it earlier this summer, that typically colleges have an early alert system. So if a student is failing, an email is sent or there's some kind of action that happens to notify that student. Maybe with high school students, we include counselors or parents, but then that becomes a FERPA issue because you are also now a college student. So there's some work we can do there to just see what the options are. But yeah, catching those students before they fall. And they are creating a real life college transcript that's going to be with them forever.
Kind of
Well,
looping
and-
back
oh,
to
go ahead, Mike.
Jim, kind of looping back to Jim and Deborah's comments about some sort of a skill assessment that would likely help with failure rates, in my opinion. But April, do you want to just talk, or do we need to do some sort of action on any of these?
There is no action needed. This is to
Okay.
let you know the conversation that's going on, and it
Okay.
will be brought before the TEA. So if members have other data points they want to see or can think of other ways to improve our performance in this, we could bring those forward, look up data, but no action is needed today. This is just a chance for the committee to talk, to hear what the colleges have come up with. If there's any other data we need before that full TEA meeting to really get into this subject.
Okay, I like that.
So I'm going to add on to that, having taught careers in 7th to 7th and 8th graders, all of them think they're going to be pro ball players on the boys, and the girls majority were models. Okay. So after we got past that and we just allowed them to dream, then one of the most important things is the second field they had to pick something for study and to learn about. And doctors were very popular. There were several areas that were very popular, but the kids, students, the kids, there was no realization about, I have to know how to read something here in order to do this. So part of the education in the middle level that I always felt was having them find out what it takes to get somewhere, what skills are needed. And that's one of the reasons I kind of feel strongly about that early understanding that you have some basic math and basic reading and basic skills, actually interpersonal as well, but those are harder to measure, to get along in the work world. I would be interested, do we have a measure of how many are employed or enrolled in post-secondary after high school? Do we disaggregate by students that participate in Excel and CTE? And then we look at I'd like to actually look at it by employment and or by enrollment in post-secondary. But that was one measure that I thought would be really interesting, because some of the anyway, I can see how some of the measurements, well, the completion is a little different. But anyway, that was one of the things that I thought would be good. And
I'm going to ask Charmin real quick.
yeah.
I know that we were trying to get the traditional KTIP report that you guys look at. We were going to try to get that for Excel and CTE, but I think that becomes small cell suppressed. So Charmin, do you want to weigh in on that?
No, absolutely. So in key stats, we do have employment and, well, we have persistence in enrollment into post-secondary. I believe we can get that by institution. It doesn't get down to the program level. And I see the notes there from Heather, the number going on into post-secondary in the field they started in. I don't think, and I think we can get that. I think that a lot of that will be small cell suppressed on just how much we will be able to show. Additionally, we have a KTIP version that we receive each year that does show employment of those students. So you can see they participated in Excel and CTE. They completed and exited post-secondary. Maybe they didn't persist. How many were employed? Again, we do run into some small cell situations there. I have that for AY23. We're in the process of getting AY24 loaded into the portal. And so I don't have that quite yet, but we could perhaps show employment by program system-wide. So instead of by institution, where we would definitely get small cell suppressed. And again, it would depend on the programs. Some of these will be easy to do. Welding is one of the programs that we have the most participation in overall. So we would not probably have to small cell suppress some of that, but we have some opportunities. It may not be always including all of the data points that we're wanting to see right off the bat.
I think if we could look at completion by employment on the group, that could be very interesting, and completion by post-secondary. And then we could look at them separately, and then we could look at them just as employment by institution, by what am I saying here? Put them together. So we can disaggregate, and we'll still probably not have a small cell size if we break it by just general rather than individual institution. And I think that would be really interesting comparison or data, I think, to look at compared to then the completion or one of those other variables we have there. Anyway, I think those would be two really good areas to look at.
We will see, consult what we have. We've also got some notes in the chat from Director Ferrier. We do have a large segment of our high school population that are not reported with a declared major, which then becomes problematic to tie them back to a program. So we will do some circling, see what we have, and bring that forward for the TEA.
I think employment and post-secondary, just as a group, I don't even know that we have to look at. Sometimes you're hearing my old stuff. Sometimes I'm not as worried about them picking some program and sticking forever with it. Now, if it's by semester, that's a great idea. But I actually think one of our most important things as parents for through high school years and all is to let them explore and to find out their passions. So
this is Amber, if you don't mind me speaking up, and Cindy put it in the chat as well, but I was just going to add that the Student Success Index there for the Excel and CTE, I think is a good indicator too of success. And I'm not sure that it breaks it out by program, but it does talk about whether it's at your institution or another institution. So that might provide some of that context that we do see that they are successful in continuing on in post-secondary and they do complete. I think it's by 1 or 2 or 3 years, but deciding maybe what a good timeline is or which one of those might be a good indicator for us as well. And also a good way to explain that there is success there versus just that completion, because some of those may take a little bit longer, but and she just put some more there in the chat, but I think that's excellent. We've looked at it, Cindy, and at the president's meeting last weekend too, and we have it. And so I think it's also a really good indicator for success. So
Amber, while you're on the screen, thinking about that completion rate. I'm just curious, a high school junior, senior, is it possible to complete a welding certificate, HVAC certificate in that 2-year period as a high school student?
It really, Mike, it depends on the path that they're taking. And I think that that's where we really talked, and Tiffany brought it up as well about the Cert A, Cert B, Cert C. And
Right.
Sharman brought it up in one of our meetings about really trying to put in some of those stackable credentials. And so if they are on an ag pathway, if it's associates, obviously not, they're not
Right.
going to get it done in that year. But if there's, a crop production cert in there, and that's where I think we could probably make some improvements as far as aligning the K-12 to the post-secondary with our counselors and our counselors at our schools too, to really track them better, because I think there's ways that we could get more completers through some of those stackable credentials, for sure. But it really just depends on the program, and that's what makes it so difficult to know for the completion, what's really success, because it is so variable with these programs.
Right.
Chair Bean, I'll make a couple comments and then I'm going to have to head on to get ready for a board meeting that's going to start soon on my end. But, one, in addition to the dashboard that was mentioned, all the school districts have the post-secondary success rate as we're looking and comparing across districts in terms of young people going into post-secondary. So some of these are systems and dashboards that are created already that I think we may want to tap into and gather that data as a first step, and align it with our post-secondary success rates in our own school districts. And just a reminder, and I said this earlier, but I did make a quick reach out, Vice President White, about young people enrolling for the unknown. And that definitely is able to happen. There are really no prerequisites on enrolling, but the idea of bringing back the AccuPlacer or any other system, again, that multiple measures will be important, because you have kids who really need it and need to be into a pathway and to finish and then move them out of poverty, and you have young people that definitely have the reading score and above and can easily get in. So there is that medium of saying young people who may not be as successful in the AccuPlacer, what are those prerequisites if we're going to be putting entrance exams back in to keep people out? How do we continue to give people opportunity? So just even on that end, so that just one piece. I know you mentioned looking at literacy anyway, but AccuPlacer, since that was thrown out as, man, we need to bring that back. There's some opportunities to be thinking about in terms of that multiple measures. The only other item that I would mention, and it's just really a question, for these 6 areas that you've listed, if it's okay with you, I'd love to share this with TCALC and our CTE director and some other folks, because sometimes the boots on the ground folks that are more times than often, the closer you are to the issue, the more ideas you may have to throw out as feedback. So I'd love Vice President White on Friday or Monday to offer some added feedback from just, Dustin Dick and who oversees all of our CTE, since we are the 6th largest district. I think that'll give you some feedback that represents a whole lot of folks. If I may do that, I'd love to give you that. And with that, those are really all the comments, and forgive me, but I'll have to step away.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. Good luck with your board meeting.
So April, if I could share this form with you too, I think that what Dr. Anderson said too, multiple measures, once a student gets in and can find success, understanding that, back to similar to what you said, Mike, being that there's multiple entry and exit points, students may be able, depending on the institution, if they offer a Cert A, to get to some of those early exit points or get well on their way to that first accomplishable goal. But understanding more about that career development piece and how it differs in each program by each institution, and how we could align the IPS and really have that. We've talked a lot about that. And then also just communication. So doing what we can, because I know it helps a lot of students. And the research shows if they can complete those college credits while they're in high school, they'll be more likely to go on. So whatever we can do, it's It's been great for the students of Kansas.
Yep. So our full TEA meeting is on the 21st. We would need all documents or any kind of thing that you want from us probably by the 13th, 14th, maybe we could do. But to start pulling that all together, we would need stuff by then. But yeah, we should be able to. The other thing, Natalie, you did say something that is important, and we learned it through the IBEST model. It's called AOK here in Kansas. That once a student has a success, typically roughly 12 credit hours, they're more likely to go on. So if we are focusing these students early enough and they get that first industry certification and completion at the college with a Cert A, they're more likely to go on to continue more education. We know that that's proven. So again, focusing them is probably a good idea.
Just curiously, has there been in there with 15,000 or so unduplicated? I don't know if it's enough to move it. Have we looked at anything by participation in the Excel and CTE by graduation rate and see if there's any significant differences if those who participate in Excel and CTE have a higher percentage of graduation versus not participating? I don't know. I'm just trying to think of things that would move possibly people's minds about how important this is. And graduation is certainly an indicator or a precursor for, it's not a determinant, but it's a precursor for success after school.
We have that measurement at the secondary level for concentrators in one pathway in CTE. We have their graduation rates, and I'd be happy to share that with April. We just shared it at our conference. It was 99.11 for concentrators who complete 2 credits in a single CTE pathway. So I'd be happy to share that. We also have how they've done on their state assessments. So yes.
That's good. That's powerful, I think.
April or Charmaine, when you visited with the community and tech colleges, was there thoughts around, I don't know if I'll word this right, but I'm going to try, scaling back the courses that are eligible for Excel and CTE and placing a focus like with maybe the Promise Act type scenario, the focused on high wage, high demand type occupations?
Yes, so that's where number 6 came from, really.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. So Promise Act is high wage, high demand, or critical need. Critical need is not defined. We have left that up to colleges to argue. We are not going to provide it one way or another. They would decide what's critical need. We'd bring it to the TEA. You guys would decide if that's a rational argument. We as a state did that for, I believe, medication aid, because it is critical need. We have to have people passing meds. So we did that and based it on that, but that would be up to the colleges. But yeah, to answer your question, that's kind of what number 6 was getting at, is it would be focused on high wage, high demand.
Okay. Personally, I don't have any quorums or disagreement with the items presented. I think that, once we or you dig into the details, that's where, things will need to be sliced out and make sure people are in agreement on.
Yep, and at the full TEA, we will have representatives from both sectors there and all of this data that you guys want to look at, and we can compare that data to each one of the items, or if there are new items we want to consider. Once everybody is comfortable, we would ask for a vote for the TEA to make a recommendation to the board, but we're kind of at ground 1 right now, level 1.
Any other thoughts or comments from the committee members? Amber or Jim, any last words of wisdom?
I think the more institutional data we can get, we can come up with even more ideas on how we fix some things and improve effectiveness.
Good comment, Jim. Anybody else? All right. Well, April, we'll look forward to the August 21st board meeting, which is a good reminder. I think it's in person, right, April?
It is.
All right. And then our next committee meeting is October 9th, Thursday, October 9th. Same time, same virtual place. Any other items that committee members would like to bring before the committee? If there's no objections, I will consider, I'll pause a little bit. Anybody object to adjourning? Hearing none, we'll consider this meeting adjourned. See you guys on the 21st. Happy trails and stay cool.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Mike.